People may have heard about mifepristone in another form. I kind of came of age in the 1980s and 1990s, and we heard this drug from France called RU486, and that's mifepristone, but that was the name it was given in France. There was talk about bringing it to the United States in the early 1990s, and finally when President Bill Clinton assumed office, on his second full day in office, he directed his cabinet to find ways to bring RU486 or mifepristone into the United States, and that's exactly what they did. First, they had to strong-arm the French manufacturer who wanted no part of the United States market to donate for free the U.S. rights to its drug, RU486 or mifepristone, to an entity known as the Population Council. Population Council, as you might guess, is actually interested in population control. So they got rights to this drug. And then they submitted a new drug application with the FDA. The FDA worked hand in hand with the Population Council to get this drug approved. Because even then, the FDA recognized the dangers inherently associated with these drugs, the FDA wanted to put some post-approval restrictions on the distribution of this drug, and appropriately so. But to do so, they had to use its fast-track approval authority. And that authority was very limited. And initially, it was intended to help AIDS patients and cancer patients receive life-saving and life-affirming drugs. Here, what the FDA had to do was call pregnancy an illness, and then argue that chemical abortion drugs provide a meaningful therapeutic benefit to women and girls who take them. Those are simply false statements, and we're presented that to the court. But in the year 2000, the last year of the Clinton administration, maybe a legacy item, the Clinton administration's FDA approved chemical abortion drugs for use in the United States. And then nothing really happened from the FDA's perspective until 2016, in the last year of the Obama administration. Again, was it a legacy issue or an election year issue? Who knows? But politics is always a theme in this case. The Obama administration did a wholesale change to the regimen where they now expanded the gestational age of the baby for which a woman could have a chemical abortion from 7 weeks to 10 weeks. And during that time period, a baby more than doubles in size. It has fingers and limbs. It can move its face. It's obviously it's a human being, but it's even more traumatic for a woman from when she has to self-administer her own abortion in her bathroom by herself. And we have reports of women saying, I gave birth to my baby. I had no idea to expect this because the other side, the abortion industry, tells me it's just a clump of cells. You won't even recognize it. And then a baby coming out, sometimes with a beating heart, is so traumatic to a woman. But the FDA did that and said, you can give labor and delivery to your own baby at 10 weeks, sometimes even longer, because they get the gestational age wrong in your own home without any medical supervision. They also no longer required a doctor. I mentioned this earlier. No longer required a doctor to see a woman anymore. It could be just any healthcare provider. And finally, they took away adverse event reporting by the abortionist. No longer they said you need to report non-fatal adverse events to the FDA. You only have to report deaths to the FDA. And you don't have to report them directly to the FDA. You just need to give it to those chemical abortion manufacturers and presume they'll give it to the FDA. So that happened in 2016. And then in 2021, the Biden administration went full force into chemical abortion and said, we're no longer even going to require a woman to see a doctor at all. And I should go back to the Obama administration. In 2016, the Obama administration said, at first, the Clinton administration required 3 doctor visits. On day 1 to get the first drug, on day 3 to get the second drug, and on day 14 to ensure there were no fetal parts remaining inside the woman or no other complications associated with the chemical abortion. The Obama administration said, we don't need to have 3 doctor's visits anymore, in-person office visits. You only need to have 1. So here are the 2 drugs, go home, and if you have any complications, go to your local emergency room and they'll take care of you. And then the Biden administration came in and said, you know what, you don't even need to see a doctor. Through telehealth or other means, you can get these drugs without ever being screened in person by a doctor. And that, to us, is dangerous, reckless, and frankly illegal. Because if a woman is not meeting with a medical provider, whether it's a doctor or a nurse practitioner, to confirm she's pregnant, to determine her gestational age within the legal limits that the FDA has prescribed, or sometimes longer, you need to have an ultrasound and an in-person examination. And finally, to ensure she doesn't have an ectopic pregnancy, which is a life-threatening condition that occurs in 1 in 50 pregnancies. And if that's not screened for properly, a woman could face death in a life-threatening situation. We've seen women die because of ectopic pregnancies, taking mifepristone or RU486 and having life-threatening bleeding and dying, because the symptoms of taking mifepristone are the same as an ectopic pregnancy. So if you are not screened for ectopic pregnancy and you take mifepristone and show signs of severe pain and bleeding, an abortionist will tell you that's perfectly fine. We expect you to be in pain and have severe bleeding, but it could have been an ectopic pregnancy. And a lot of times that's what has occurred, and women have presented themselves to emergency rooms and ultimately sometimes died because of that. And the Biden administration said, you no longer have to see a doctor. You can go ahead and do it. So everything that I just described is subject to our lawsuit because we think the approval was illegal for many reasons. And the stripping away of basic protections for women and girls in the last 6 years or so have been really traumatic and has escalated the amount of women presenting themselves to the emergency rooms across this country.